Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the southern U.S. I'm Andrew Pritchard, Senior Meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, you're probably accustomed to hearing Eric Snodgrass's voice here on the southern U.S. forecast. We're going to be switching it over. Eric's going to be focusing more on our longer range forecast products and our climate modeling, whereas I am going to be focusing more on the regional content and the short-term forecast. So I'll be taking over the South. I promise you'll get used to hearing my voice here each and every morning, even though that, Eric is the best of the best when it comes to this stuff. But we're going to go ahead and we'll jump right in. And again, a lot of this forecast is going to be focused on Laura and Marco here. As we talk about a very active tropics, that's going to be driving the forecast here across the southern U.S. We're looking at the last 72 hours of precipitation. You're seeing a lot of heavy rainfall here from Marco off the Gulf Coast and then along the coast of the Florida Peninsula over into portions of coastal Alabama and Mississippi. And then a lot of that moisture being blown off to the north and to the east by some of our stronger upper level winds there. So what acted to kind of keep Marco from intensifying has blown a lot of that heavier precipitation, a lot of that tropical moisture north and eastward across the southeast here, again across the peninsula of Florida, across Alabama and Mississippi here as well, getting into portions of Georgia and even South Carolina. Now we'll take an expanded view here. We're looking at the satellite picture here, infrared. Now the center of Marco is actually right about here, and then we've got Laura off to the south, getting ready to enter the Gulf of Mexico. So the center of Marco here, but again, the stronger jet stream winds that kept this thing from, kept this particular system from really organizing, blowing much of the moisture, blowing much of the shower and thunderstorm activity off to the north and east across inland areas here. So even though Marco still off across the Gulf, a lot of the rain and thunderstorm activity making its way inland here. We'll flip it over and look at the radar picture, and again, a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity. We'll go ahead and use a color that shows up here. How about black? Again, from coastal portions of Mississippi, the Florida Peninsula, Alabama, north and eastward into northern portions of Georgia, and even some shower activity making its way along the North Carolina and South Carolina border as well. Now, as we talk about Laura now expected to become a major hurricane, category 3 or higher, as it makes landfall along the Texas and Louisiana border. Again, we're looking at some of the forecasts here, the spaghetti plots beginning to converge on an eastern Texas or a western Louisiana coastal landfall here. Again, very close to the border between Texas and Louisiana on Wednesday night as a major category 3 or nearby that, nearby strength hurricane. So we're looking at the hurricane force wind speed probabilities. Those beginning to tick upward again right along the border of Texas and Louisiana. Now a better than 50% chance of getting those hurricane force winds into those areas. As we look at the most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds along the coastal areas here from Texas into Louisiana all the way over to coastal Mississippi, looking at the earliest arrival here right around, or most likely, a Wednesday at 8 p.m. So this is looking like a Wednesday night event here across coastal portions of Texas and Louisiana. Next 5 days of rainfall, again, where you see the orange shading, that's where we're talking about 6 to 10 inches of precipitation as Marco makes landfall and moves off to the north before hooking off to the east across northern portions of Arkansas. But if I take that off, again, the yellow and the orange shading here showing anywhere from 4 to 10 inches of rainfall following Laura's circulation northward here across eastern portions of Texas, western portions of Louisiana, and then getting into southern and central portions of Arkansas as we get later into the week. So the greatest risk of flash flooding over the next 3 days, obviously a moderate risk right now. Following that same trajectory is what I wanted to say. We may see that upgraded to a high risk as we look at a little bit closer to the event, a little bit higher certainty, but again, right along the Louisiana-Texas border northward into portions of Arkansas is where we expect that heaviest rainfall. Now the peak storm surge forecast, this is an experimental graphic, but looking at anywhere from 7 to 11 feet of peak storm surge here across western portions of the Louisiana coast here, with the peak storm surge expected kind of between High Island and Morgan City as you kind of follow it over this direction. But again, we're still a couple of days out. This is subject to change and shift east or west just slightly, but right now beginning to converge on this area here, right between the High Island and Morgan City area for kind of the peak storm surge as we get into this landfall here Wednesday. Again, storm surge warnings in effect then from Houston all the way over to the coastal portions of Louisiana as we talk about Laura's arrival. So looking at the upper level pattern then, you can see Laura down here, the upper level circulation. I want to draw your attention though to a trough that's going to be swinging out of the Canadian Prairie into the northern plains here as we get into mid to late week. That's what's going to help guide Laura off to the east as we get into Thursday and Friday. So here comes Laura making its way up the coast here between Louisiana and Texas, moving northward into Arkansas as we get into midday Thursday. Now, the trough starting to dive out of the Canadian Prairie here as we get into Thursday and Friday. You see it here. Now here's Laura making its way into northern Arkansas, and then here comes the trough, helping to kind of push Laura now off to the east quickly as we head into the weekend. There's a front that's associated with that, which you can see when we look at the moisture content within the atmosphere, the precipitable water content. And this is a way that we can kind of gauge, again, the moisture content within the atmosphere. And we're going to look at Laura, we're going to look at the front pushing Laura, but then we're also going to look at the pattern that follows, because we're going to have the continued threat of some potentially heavy rainfall over the very same area that's going to be dealing with Laura as we head into the weekend and early next week. So here comes Laura. You see Laura's very deep moisture content now making its way up from the Texas-Louisiana border as we get into Thursday and Friday. I'm going to let this continue to play. Here comes Laura taking this deep tropical moisture surge with it northward into parts of Arkansas, into the Ohio River Valley here as we get into the later part of the week. Now, you're going to see a push of cooler and drier air coming in now as we get into the end of the week. Here's Friday. This is the cold front being dragged to the south by that trough that's pushing Laura off to the east. Now, what happens with that trough in that front, again, first we kick Laura off to the east quickly as we head through the weekend, but this front does not clear the Gulf of Mexico. Instead, it stalls right about here. We start drawing Gulf moisture northward again, and then we have the potential for a couple upper level troughs to then swing from west to east across the Central Plains into the south, creating one or two organized storm systems that could lead to the redevelopment of showers and storms across this region, tapping into, again, that undisturbed, really deep Gulf moisture, giving it another trigger in the form of a frontal boundary, and then the upper level support delivered by those troughs. Again, this is where we get the potential for Laura to move out, but the pattern to kind of readjust and continue the threat for some showers and heavy rain producing thunderstorms as we head even into next week. So this is all the way getting into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and we could still be talking about heavy rain across the region. So in the short term, what this looks like from the high resolution rapid refresh, Marco's moisture continues to make its way northward. We could see the continuance of shower and thunderstorm activity across portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, getting into Tennessee, and then western portions of the Carolinas here as we head through the late afternoon, evening, and early overnight hours. Now, as we start getting into Wednesday, you see Laura making its way off to the north. We're going to pivot over here and look at the European model and take this a little bit further. So, again, as we head through the afternoon and evening hours, today, watching for scattered shower and storm activity across Louisiana, northeastward into portions of the western Carolinas. Laura then makes its way northward here, making landfall Wednesday night, somewhere between, very close to the Louisiana and Texas border, making its way northward here. This is midday Thursday, getting into Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, pushing into southwestern Oklahoma, western Arkansas as we get into Thursday night and Friday morning. Now, as we start getting into Friday night and Saturday, here comes the upper level trough, the first one out of the north, bringing that cold front with it. That's going to take Laura, pushing Laura across Kentucky and Tennessee Saturday afternoon into portions of the Carolinas, maybe far northern North Carolina as we get into Saturday night and Sunday morning. But then remember, the front stalls here. We continue to bring Gulf moisture northward. We're going to see another trough begin to swing in from the west as we get into the early part of next week, the last days of August, the first days of September. And this is what leads to the potential for several days of continued thunderstorm activity across the southeast. This is the area that I'm really concerned about right here. Parts of western Oklahoma, eastern Oklahoma, getting into northeastern Texas, parts of Arkansas, northern Louisiana. If we go ahead and take a look at total precipitation here, you'll watch Laura make its way northward here as we get into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We go ahead and take the drawings off and then watch what follows, though. Here goes Laura, but then we continue to add rain on top of that as we get into the end of the weekend and early next week. The probability of picking up more than 4 inches of rainfall then from the European ensemble model, where you see the orange shading there, that's where we got a better than a 50 to 70% chance. Again, really beginning to be bullseyed on this corridor here. A lot of that from Laura, but then again, continuing to see the chance for showers and storms lingering into next week. Some of those could produce locally heavy rainfall. So I do think that even beyond Laura, we will be talking about a flooding threat, especially across this region right here into next week. As we talk about high temperatures then, just to wrap this video up, heading into the weekend, again, the ridge of high pressure expanding across portions of the central U.S., allowing heat to build across the Midwest. That's not going to happen down here, though, with all kinds of tropical moisture and cloud cover in the region, keeping our temperatures a bit cooler. Highs in the 80s and 90s across this region. I say a bit cooler. That is still quite uncomfortable, especially with tropical humidity in the area. 80s and 90s are going to be lingering into the day on Wednesday. A little bit cooler, where we see Laura starting to make its way northward on Thursday. High temperatures generally in the upper 80s as we head into Friday. As tropical conditions begin to move on out, we'll see those temperatures beginning to warm once again into the weekend and early next week, with lower 90s possible across the southeast, with temperatures potentially nearing or surpassing 100 across the state of Texas.